Okay, so we've solved one-step equations. Now we're going to start looking at two-step equations. And they're going to look something like this. We're going to have to undo some subtracting or adding, and then we'll have to do some multiplying or dividing to get the variable by itself. And remember, what we do to one side, we have to do to both. We'll get there in a minute. So what I'm going to suggest is that you use addition or subtraction first to get the variable by itself. Here, to cancel out subtracting 3, I'm going to add 3 to both sides first, and I'll do that in a minute. After we've added or subtracted, then we're going to use multiplying or dividing to actually solve for the variable or get the variable all by itself. Okay, so let's look at this first one here. It says 5x minus 3 equals negative 23. So like I said, to undo subtracting 3, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. That makes a 0 over here, so all we're left with is 5x. It cancels that out. And I'm going to add 3 here. Okay, let's see. What do I have now? Negative 3 plus 3, again, that's 0, so those all go away. So I have 5x, and negative 23 and positive 3 makes negative 20. Okay, so 5x is negative 20. This is multiplication again. This is 5 times x. So to undo multiplying, what I do is divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5. Okay, 5 over 5 makes 1. So I just get 1x, or x, equals negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. And that's it. Okay, let's look at another one here. Pretty much the same thing, except you'll notice this is division instead of multiplying, but we're going to go about it the same way. So first, in order to get rid of subtracting 1, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Okay, again, that makes a 0. Negative 1 plus 1 is nothing. So what I'm left with over here is m over 4 equals negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7. Okay, so this says m divided by 4 equals negative 7. So to undo dividing by 4, what I do is multiply both sides by 4. And then after I do that, so the 4 divided by 4 is 1, so I'm just left with 1m. So I've got my variable by itself. And negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. And there's my answer. Okay, we're going to look at it one more over here, and then we'll do a few more in a minute. This is basically the same thing, it's just kind of written funny. And then you got to be careful about this minus sign here, and we'll worry about that in a minute. But instead of thinking adding or subtracting, think positives and negatives. This is a positive 5. I want to cancel that out. So what do I add to 5 to make it a 0, to make it go away? Well, I do its opposite. So if this is positive 5, I'm going to use a negative 5 or subtract 5 from both sides. Okay, remember both sides of the equal sign. You don't want to put the minus 5 under here because then it'd be out of balance. 1 on this side of the equal sign, 1 over here. Okay, so 5 and negative 5, those make 0. Those all cancel out. So what do you have left? Well, you got to be careful because this negative sign still here. This is negative 2a equals 11. Take away 5 is 6. Make sure and bring the negative sign down when you're solving. You haven't made that go away yet. So this is negative 2 times a is positive 6. So to undo multiplying by negative 2, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. Okay, negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. So I have 1a over here. Again, negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. And then over here I have 6 divided by negative 2, which is negative 3. So I get a equals negative 3. Okay, again, add or subtract first. Multiply or divide second, and you'll do your 2 steps, and you'll hopefully have your equation solved. All right, let's look at a couple more. Okay, there's kind of a lot today, but these are important. You're going to be using these like from now until you graduate. Okay, so this is one like I just did. So negative 2 plus 4m is 18. So again, think of this as a negative 2. So to undo a negative 2, I'm going to do its opposite, which is positive 2 to both sides. Okay, after that, I have 4m. 18 plus 2 is 20. Okay, so to undo multiplying by 4, I divide by 4. And 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 21, and so I get 1m. And then over here, 20 divided by 4 is 5. So 1m, or m, equals 5. So I'm going to do a few like this because they're a little different. Okay, here's another one. Negative 3 plus x divided by 4 is negative 1. Some people say x over 4, but it's division. Okay, so here's a negative 3. Again, to cancel that out, I do a positive 3 to both sides. So what I'm left with then is x over 4, x divided by 4, negative 1 plus 3 is 2. Okay, so what number divided by 4 is 2? Well, most of you will see that it's 8, but I'm going to show the steps anyway. I'd like you to also when you're doing your homework. Okay, 4 over 4 is 1. So I just have 1x on the left side, and 2 times 4 is 8, just like we thought. Okay, I added first and then I multiplied. All right, 2 more. Okay, so here's a plus 2. This is written like we're used to. So to undo adding 2, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Okay, so this is going to be a 4 over here. Now on this side, that's a 0. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. But what I'm left with is, look at this. This is negative y. Okay, that's really negative 1y. I didn't write the 1 in there. And so I like to solve these, though, just by thinking about it rather than dividing. What the official step would be here, and I'll write that in a minute, is to divide by negative 1. But just think about it for a minute. If negative y is positive 4, what's positive y equal to? Okay, again, if negative y is positive 4, what's positive y? Well, hopefully you realize that negative y is positive 4, so positive y has to be negative 4. Another way to think about this is saying the opposite of y is positive 4. Well, what's the opposite of positive 4? Well, negative 4. Again, the way I like to think about it, if negative y is positive 4, well, that means positive y has to equal negative 4. We're switching the signs. Now the official thing is, again, this is a negative 1 here without the 1 written down. And so what you would write down if you were showing your steps, and you don't have to show this to me. If you can do this part in your head, I'm very happy with that. So what most people will insist you do is divide by negative 1. When you divide by 1, you don't change anything, right? 5 divided by 1 is 5. But a negative divided by a negative makes it a positive. So that cancels out, if you will, that negative sign out in front. So if I divide this side by negative 1, I divide that side by negative 1 too to get my answer. But like I said, if you can figure it out, if you could say to yourself, if negative y is positive 4, that means positive y has to be negative 4, and do that in your head, I'm very happy. That's great. All right, last but not least. Okay, now this one's going to be a little weird, and it shouldn't be, but for some reason it just kind of is, and you'll see in a minute. So 8x minus 3 equals negative 3. Okay, so to undo minusing or subtracting here, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Okay, so what's left on this side? What's left on this side is 8x, because negative 3 and positive 3 make a 0, and they cancel out. But look at that, negative 3 and positive 3 make a 0. So, whoa, that's kind of weird, but you know what? 0 is just a number. It's fine. 8 times what number is 0? Well, the only way to multiply two numbers together and get a 0 is if one of them is 0. But just to show the steps here, this says 8 times some number is 0, so I'm going to divide both sides by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1, so I'm left with 1x, and 0 divided by 8 is 0, because 0 divided by anything is 0. Except for 0, but you'll learn about that later. So 0 divided by 8 is 0. And you're done. So wow, that was a lot. That was 7 examples. That was a whole bunch of problems for you to take a look at and hopefully get something from. And please try both the worksheets I've given you, and hopefully that this makes sense and you do okay. Show all your steps, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Thank you.